This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Judith Mancini Today is sponsored by Basic Brands, Inc., providing the highest quality specialty products in the natural food industry. Visit basicbrandsinc.com and enter JMT15 for your 15% discount on your very first order, including their best-selling vitamin E ointment, which helps restore moisture and elasticity to your skin. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. I know some of our friends on the East Coast are suffering from the wildfire smoke. So just be careful. Wear an N95 mask if you're going out in some of the worst places like Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania are supposed to be the worst with these wildfire smoke today. So be careful because it can cause you to have respiratory problems. Of course, we deal with these things all the time in California, which is unfortunate. So we know what's happening to you guys. Be careful. All right, here's my opinion on some of the things that are happening in the news. We lost the founder of the 700 Club, the man who put Christianity into the conservative Republican movements during the presidential elections way back when. He was 93. His name was Pat Robertson, and he was into politics as much as he was into Christianity. So people who followed him will be very sad. He retired a couple of years ago. We give our condolences to his family and his followers. So we are losing freedom of speech every day, and it's getting worse and worse. Tucker Carlson, was let go by Fox News, and he hasn't done or said anything since then. I noticed that they're still running his shows on Fox Nation. He has a contract, and apparently he's still being paid, and I'm sure he has a non-compete in the contract. I don't know how long his contract runs for. I don't recall. But if you start looking at these things, Fox News has now told him that he is breaching his contract by being on Twitter. Apparently yesterday, or the day before, he got on Twitter and did a 10-minute monologue. Well, a monologue is usually concerning your own thoughts and your own opinions. And one of the things that Elon Musk said when he took back Twitter was that there would be freedom of speech. Now, I don't see that having a 10-minute post on Twitter, which is not being sponsored or touted as being a new show, is in breach of contract. But of course, I'm not an attorney. But if I still owned my publications, and somebody went out and sent in an article for no pay to some publication that wanted something on health, I would not say they were in breach of contract with me. Now, granted, publishing is different than television, and you have to keep that in mind with contracts. Most people who are writing into different magazines and newspapers don't have contracts with them. They just send them in and hope they will be paid at one point, but they don't have a written contract necessarily. So it's a little different, particularly if Tucker is still receiving pay or compensation of some sort. But this is opening a can of worms. Both Fox and CNN have had problems with ratings since they've been letting people go. CNN has lost so many people watching it because of Fox taking over their audiences. They're all in an uproar. And yesterday, the CEO of CNN was let go. So let's see what he does. They've let go most of their headliners that are hosts on CNN. And so far, they haven't replaced them with anybody who is bringing in the ratings that Fox still has. And one of the cable news, which is sort of alternative news, if you will, because it's new in the last few years, is Newsmax. And they are picking up an awful lot of the CNN viewers that no longer want to be watching CNN. So this is very interesting for the history of television, which is a big deal out here in Los Angeles. It's a big deal because way back during Tiananmen Square, that was when CNN first started, and they had the whole headlock on the cable news. And it was live. It was live when it was happening. And Ted Turner was the founder of CNN and doing those things. And he then obviously sold it and all. But this was a new revolution in news, the coverage. And from there, we went on to other news that was not network news, like the big three, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And people started fleeing to the cable news stations because actually they were more opinion than hard news. They did the hard news, but often they would give an opinion. And I think that's what we like to see. We like to see people give an opinion, but a fair opinion, and have debates on the news stations with the left and the right. And that's what Fox News was all about. So there are some wonderful people left at Fox. We'll have to see how this all shakes out. So far, they haven't replaced Tucker's spot, but Harris Faulkner is on there now, and I think she would be a great replacement. She's working very hard at keeping that role. They've gone through many of the different anchors of shows to try to take that spot. And so far, nobody has had the ratings that Tucker had. They're all great people, but we'll see what happens with cable news and how fast Fox and CNN can cure this, and how fast Newsmax is growing. Now, that's my opinion, but I want to tell you some other things that are going on. You're seeing a lot of people declare their candidacy for the primaries for president. In the Democratic field, we have Biden, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Marianne Williamson. The only one who has really hit the campaign trail now for the primaries is Robert F. Kennedy. Now, people love him or they think he's a kook, and he's well aware of that. They think he's a kook because he's against vaccinations, and I can't say I blame him in some cases. I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I was against the COVID vaccines for what they were comprised of. But he does have other opinions. And of course, he comes from a political family and has name recognition, be it good or bad. Marianne Williamson thinks she can cure all the world's ills by sharing the love. And I admire her for her opinions of sharing the love. And she's great at relationship coaching and other things concerning love and getting along with people and being compassionate. But I don't think that she would do very well in the primaries, as she dropped out last time also. but he gives a different perspective to it. Now, I'm not even going to name all the people who have declared for the primaries on the Republican side. I'm only going to make my opinion heard about some of them. And I think a lot of them are very wealthy. A former governor that I believe he was governor of North Dakota, and he just declared it for the Republican primary. And I don't see it. He's a multimillionaire, and that's great. He was a hugely successful businessman, and that's great. But he's not the same kind of businessman that Donald Trump was. Now, I'm still not endorsing Donald Trump or anybody else. I'm just giving you some facts. Former Governor Christie has put his hat in the ring, and he's done this before, and he seems to think that he could do it again and maybe pull some of those votes away from Trump and succeed again. But he's never succeeded before. I think his time is done. I'm not liking anything he's saying in his declaration of running for the president's slot on the ticket. The one I'm shocked about is former Vice President Pence. I'm not shocked that he's running. I'm shocked that he is really kind of running on a platform of bashing Trump over January 6th and some other things. He is managing to say that he thought they had a great administration up to that point. But I think he's being a little condescending, and there are many people who think that he should not have declared the final vote in the election. And I don't like the fact that he has some odd feelings. He continuously says he is a man of God, and yet he bashes people. And he has an odd thing saying he can never be at dinner without his wife. Well, that in itself, she's not qualified to be a politician or to have secret conversations with heads of states. So what's he going to do if he has to meet with a female prime minister of the UK or France or some other place? Odd things. And I'm a Christian. I never made any bones about it. I've been very vocal about it in all my businesses. But I don't preach. I'm not a preacher or a reverend, nor do I have a degree in anything resembling religion. And I don't think he should be lecturing on these things. And therefore, I would never vote for him. Freedom of religion is one of our constitutional rights. And I kind of feel like he's preaching to his choir. So I am going to listen to everybody who's running. I don't think that any of the women who have already declared or are going to declare are up to the number one spot of being president. I would love to see a woman president at some point. I definitely do not want to see the giggler. But I don't think that the Republicans have a woman who should be the number one person being president and protecting us in wars, which are looking more and more like they may be coming to the United States, since we can't even protect ourselves from spying. And I understand that in Cuba, they've now, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, I'm finished with the presidents and declaring for running for the primaries. I'm appalled that we have heard no statement from our president concerning anything lately. All he does is slip and fall. And you have to hand it to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he's already been on the border and talk to everybody about it, which he wants closed and sealed and back to the way it used to be. I'm not against immigration. I'm against illegal immigration, okay? So I'm just wondering why nobody, I know somebody from the Pentagon mentioned it the other day, but now China has a spy set up in Cuba? Uh-oh, this reminds me of the Bay of Pigs, only at least Kennedy tried to do something with the Cuban nationals that were patriotic and were against Castro. Even if it did fail, a lot of people were against him. His brother was not against him, Robert F. Kennedy Sr. But how can we let spy balloons fly over us? How can we let Cuba permit China to set up a spy facility? What is going on? I think it's time for you to get involved. You know, listen to the mayor of New York. His solution to the drug problems and the immigration problems and where they will sleep. Well, first of all, the sleeping problem of putting them in people's private homes reminds me of a scene in Dr. Zhivago when they were putting people that were no longer in favor with the government. They were allowing these wealthy people who had worked hard or inherited their wealth, what have you. You can go back and look at Russian history yourself. But they were putting all the homeless and people into private homes, and they were destroying them. This is bizarre. In communist China, they take over people's homes too. It's just nutty, okay? And it's very frightening. And you need to have an opinion about these things, because I'm telling you, the way Newsom is running California, people may be coming to knock on your door and stay in your home. Now, the other thing I think that is totally absurd is putting vending machines in certain areas of New York City. Like, I'm not sure where they put them, but they have really strange things in them. They don't have packages of Doritos or Pepsis or chocolate bars. They have condoms. They actually have fentanyl things so that you can try to make sure that the fentanyl you're using is okay. People use fentanyl for different reasons. I guess I don't understand the fentanyl because some people have prescriptions for it. This is just craziness. So nobody that was interviewed on Fox, the man in the street, said that they thought these vending machines would help the homeless or the drug addicts. If you watch some of the news on any of the channels, the big three or the cable news, Fox and CNN, you can look at these people that are lying down on the streets. They're like zombies. They're staring into space, into nothingness. They're curled up on themselves and weaving back and forth, and it's horrible. What is wrong with Pelosi and Newsom that they think that they can continue to be in office when they're letting our golden state fall apart? And I'm sure there are other people in these New York cities and Chicago and all where 100 or more people are shot and killed over the weekends. It's time to rise up. I'm not calling for a revolution. I'm calling for you to speak out. Get your politicians, your people that are in office, call them daily, express your opinion, bring back law and order, support the police. We're going to lose everything. A 70-year-old woman was robbed up the street from us in a little strip mall the other day just because she was going into someplace like CVS and had her purse and walked from her car, and somebody attacked her and stole her purse in her 70s. What is wrong with these people? I'm sure there wasn't enough money in her purse or anything else to help this guy go get high. It's unbelievable to me. And what's happening in schools with female athletes and all, please, please, children in schools should not be getting sex education and transgender operations because their parents wanted a girl instead of a boy. You know, years ago, I used to say to my husband, we've been married over 27 years now, and I used to say to him in the 90s, we got married in the late 90s, obviously. I said, this country is becoming very decadent. Now, I'm no prude, but I have watched our country decline. Maybe it's because we were the generation in the 60s of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, I admit I had sex. I admit I liked rock and roll, but I never did drugs. Okay? So there were a lot of us like that. And I don't think a lot of the people had sex when they were in high school. Now it's the thing to do. You feel left out if you haven't. It's decadent. And I've said to my husband many times, it's what happened in Rome, the fall of the Roman Empire, when they had the orgies with the drinking and who knows what kind of drugs they may have been doing from plants and things like that. Okay, let's move on. All right. Today's show is about getting older. Now I'm going to put my glasses on and you won't be able to see me anymore from the reflection. But we are going to discuss 2 ways to age. Which way will you choose? After we enter middle age, we often think about the last part of life. Choosing your path will determine how you will most likely affect your longevity. Now, I'm directing this to people between 50 and 70, 80, what have you, because after 50, most of you will be retiring, or your spouse will be retiring, or maybe you're seeking a second job or something like that. And this is the time that you need to nail down these decisions of what you're going to be doing. There are choices you have to make, and they have to be based on your inner qualities and your personal choices, not what somebody else tells you. Now, I'm not speaking to people who have chronic diseases like cancer, heart disease, what have you, things like this, cognitive things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. I'm speaking to people who still have it all together and they're not deteriorating yet. Because as you grow older, you do know that your body changes and your mind changes. That's why you need to have a saying on how you're going to spend the rest of your life. Now, most of my friends are in their 50s to 80s. I think that's a good range because my daughter is 48. So I do have friends in all those different ages, and we communicate regularly. Yes, I even communicate with my daughter's friends, and they communicate with me. I'm not just sending them off an email and say, oh, I didn't like that post you put on Facebook. I never do things like that. And anyway, they're nice people. I haven't seen anything really horrible. And my son would be 50 this year. So you see, his friends are still in touch with me and we still communicate. One of them is in Seoul, Korea, quite successful in the hospitality industry. And he has been communicating with me for several years now. And I really enjoy it because I also have a friend in her 80s who is from South Korea. So I have many varied backgrounds from my friends that are all fascinating. So what we want to do is think about what happens to your bodies, and they start doing this in your 50s, and you need to combat this so that you can make more choices for your life. You know, your body and your bones start shrinking in size. Your bones and your muscles start shrinking, so that sometimes your spine starts curving and you can't stand up straight, and you start having things happen if you haven't been exercising enough and you haven't added enough calcium to your diet and magnesium. Your bones may be losing their density and it could develop into osteoporosis. Now, sometimes this can be inherited. Now, they're not saying it's genetic, but I'm going to tell you a little story here, because I do have osteoporosis and I've been watching my bone density shrink for years. Now, it doesn't affect me in any way. I still walk. I can run a short distance. I swim. I do different things. But I will tell you, the year that I took off to grieve for my son, I stopped doing anything, which is the worst thing you can do for osteoporosis. I just had a bone density test and it hasn't gotten any worse. So you can do things to help yourself. There are medications you can take and all. I've tried some of them. I never saw a change in the density of my bones. It never stopped. And some of them made me sick. Some of them you have to stand up for 30 minutes after you swallow the pill. Some of them you get an injection every 6 months, something like that. I have been told by several doctors that once you pass the age of 73, you can't build bone back. And I may be totally different because I have a different reason I believe that I have osteoporosis. I have osteoporosis, I believe, and some muscle weakness because my mother was a polio victim when I was a child. And she got it when I was 5 and my brother was 2. I think I've told you this on some of my other shows. And it has affected us differently. I know some men who had it. My brother does not have any side effects from it. I have had a couple, and one of them is the osteoporosis. I truly believe that this is a side effect of it. Now, there are many men who had polio and the virus plus some paralysis and have recovered from both of them. But they have had muscle weakness, and all they can do for it is try to lift the small weights and things like that and walk and try to be healthy in other ways. So what you want to do is make sure that you're doing something in your diet and in your exercising to promote not losing any more strong feelings in your bones and muscles. You want to exercise, you want to walk. You want to try to maintain your flexibility and your balance. You know, a lot of injuries and breaking bones and knees comes from different things. It comes from being a super athlete. Maybe you played golf, maybe you played tennis, and you wore out your knees as you grew older and have to have replacements, maybe your hips. But a lot of people, as they get in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, have a hard time getting up off the floor. Now, if you have grandkids, you know you play on the floor an awful lot. And I noticed that I was having a problem getting up from the floor like 2.5 years ago, which I thought was strange because I've always been kind of a dancer and spinning around and getting down on the floor to play with the kids, doing all sorts of things. So I am now going to do some exercises to help strengthen my legs and my hips to get up off the floor. Now, another good reason you want to do these uplifting exercises is because many people fall. Like I said, your balance starts to go. It could be you getting out of bed too fast in the morning because the blood, instead of being all in your whole body, suddenly drains from your head and your brain, and you can get a little vertigo. So if you get up too fast and you walk around the bed too fast because you have to go pee pee, you could fall down. Ostensibly, you could fall down. Now, what are you going to do if I'm not there to help you get up? Well, these exercises show you how to cross your legs and get up by twisting and turning and get yourself back up. God forbid that you hit your head. We don't want anybody hitting their heads. But you can do these exercises and progress to this sitting on the floor, crossing your legs, turning your body, and lifting yourself up. You can even do it without your hands. And this is something that I think all of us of a certain age should start doing. All right, well, now I'm talking about your health and your exercising, and that goes with your attitude. So your choice is, do you want to have a good attitude about aging, or do you want to have a bad attitude about aging? Do you want to think that you're going to die tomorrow, or do you want to think that you're going to live for a few more weeks, few more months, few more years? Would you like to see your grandchild grow up? I would. I would like to see my children grow up, but unfortunately, I lost my son, so I can't see him grow anymore from the age of 48 when he passed. So I want you to think about all these things. What will be your quality of life? Now, some of the things that you need to think about with your quality of life, particularly in this economy, is what is going to concern you from your 50s on up. Now, I have a few friends that have decided to go live in kind of a semi-assisted living home. One of them is in her late 80s, and she just moved into one. She had a beautiful home, and she decided she's by herself now, and she thought it would be good if somebody else was around. And she happened to choose a very lovely one, and she has the wherewithal to be able to do that. And she said, I'm doing things that I haven't done for years. I'm now getting outside. I'm walking around. She walks around this beautiful complex they have. She's made new friends. She's started entertaining again because it's possible to do that there. And she's having the time of her life. And many people say that once you get to a certain age, you don't have a lot of responsibilities. You can help your children, your grown adult children, if you want to, you need to. You can always give them money that they were going to inherit, or maybe you don't have any money to give them and you don't need to support them. But you can decide all of that business type stuff on your own. But what I want to say is you should think about what you're going to do. Now, I don't think I will be ready for living in an assisted living home for many years unless something drastic happens to me, because I'm in fairly good health. I would say I'm in good health. So I don't go to the doctor regularly. I did when I was younger. You have to go, and men need to go and get the prostate checked. Women have to go and get the pap smear and the mammogram. Men should get them too. Maybe if you feel a lump, you might get breast cancer. Men do get that. So you should go at least and have a blood draw at least once a year to make sure that your blood is okay. You're not getting diabetes, or you're not on the verge of having too high of cholesterol that it might cause a heart attack or something. So you need to do that. I'm not suggesting you don't do that. But if you're in good health, you could go to your doctor once a year and check these things out. Now, as you grow older, you may have to go to more specialists, and you want to do that. But let's get off the health thing now, and let's talk about what you think about yourself. Old people are now considered to be in their late 70s. The 70s are the new 50s. I don't think a lot of my friends are even old people in their late 70s. I certainly don't think of myself as an old person. I know some people probably do because they can't imagine people living to be this long. But now our generation, with all the things I talked about doing in our 60s, in the 60s, a lot of us don't have any problems with it. So you need to not be pessimistic and fear old age, and don't disdain old people because we're wise. We're wiser than some young people. And you know why? Because we have made it our mission to be wise and have an open mind to all different ways of living. Don't patronize old people. Hey, honey, can I help you out of this chair? Because I don't think you can make it. Well, they're perfectly fine. They just need to scoot back a little bit and stand up and be graceful about it. You don't need to patronize them. Don't start telling your aging parents that they no longer can write a check or decide if they want a manicure and pedicure. Okay? Get involved with them if they're deciding and ask you, okay, I'm worried about where I'm going to live, what's going to happen. Help me plan this out. You know, I grew up after my mother had polio and my father deserted us. I grew up with my grandmas, my Grandma Louise and my Grandma Ella. Now, Grandma Ella was my Grandma Louise's mother-in-law. And we moved from Los Angeles to Gardena, where I've told you many times I had a wonderful high school graduation, education and graduation. So I learned not to be condescending to old people. I learned the wise decisions they made, the fun they had, what they did. My grandmother Louise became involved in politics when age means nothing to a child at 5, so I don't know how old she was, but I would guarantee you that I thought she was probably, now I think she was probably in her late 40s, 50s when she took us into her house. She didn't even know how to drive. So this is what I'm talking about. These are people that you should respect and learn how strong they are and how they continued living a good life, even if they took on the burden or the love of raising children that didn't have their parents with them anymore. It was an interesting time. As I said, my grandmother got interested in politics, and she would take me down to not the polling places, but the headquarters where they stuffed envelopes. Can you believe they licked the envelopes? They licked the stamps until somebody brought in one of these squeegee things to do it. This is how things have evolved. They hand addressed the envelopes. Now, these were requests to raise money for the Republican Party at the time. So I was bedecked with "I like Ike" buttons all over me at a very young age. And I guess this is why I'm conservative today and a Republican today. So I guess some things never change. And that is how she made her life interesting. And she stayed engaged with her friends and the people she met, the women she met in the Republican Women's Club and different things like that. Now, my 80-something-year-old great-grandmother was a little overweight, and she had lost, I can't even believe this, she had 5 sons, and by the time she moved in with us, she had one living, and he was one of the founders of Borrego Springs in California. And he loved to race cars, and he had a terrible crash and lost one of his legs. So she didn't see him very often, but when she fell and broke her hip, he was driven up there, and they picked up my grandma Ella, and they took her back to Borrego Springs, and she lived with her son, Hugh Woods, for the rest of her life. We don't desert our elderly in this family. And that's why now I'm discussing with my daughter what Lou and I are thinking of doing. And Lou and I lived all over the country because after he retired as a CEO, he did turnarounds for several companies, venture capital companies and things like that. They would buy a company and they needed somebody to go in and take over, turn this around to make it profitable for them or more profitable for them. So he did that. And that involved us moving all over the country because I didn't have my kids at home. They were now in college and now at the beginning of their careers. And so they were living in other places. And so I was able to move all over and go all over the country. And boy, I tell you, we had a ball. So that's adventure. We didn't get married until I was 50. Amazing. So many of you women say that you lost your husband or you got a divorce and you can't find somebody. Well, of course not. You can't sit on your bottom in your house and just do dating on the internet. It's okay to do it, but you can't make that your life. Okay. You can meet nice people on the internet. Just be very careful. Be sure you vet them properly. There are dating sites for older people in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I think people think we might be nuts for doing this, but why not? There's lonely men out there too. They've lost their wives or they've gotten a divorce. So put yourself out there. Now, where you're living and how you're living is one of the biggest problems facing people. One thing that is happening with some of my friends is they own a house and they're looking for women who don't own a house. And they might have 2 or 3 bedrooms, guest rooms that they're not filling up with kids or guests now. And they're actually renting those rooms to a woman that they've met, maybe through a bridge club or a women's club politics or what have you. Maybe they've met them through their new job that they're doing as a side hustle for them. And they will rent at very good prices a room to them. Now, this helps 2 people. It helps the person who needs a place to live, and it helps the person who owns the property, because the person who owns the property may have just lost their husband or may have gone through the divorce, and getting a divorce at an older age is not recommended unless you have good reasons to do it. Divorce is never the greatest thing anyway, but that's if you're in a rotten marriage, you better get a divorce because you do have many years to live and you may as well live them happy instead of unhappy. So this affords the woman who owns the property to have companionship, somebody to sit down and eat dinner with, somebody to go grocery shopping with, somebody to go see a movie with, somebody to play gin with. There's all sorts of reasons why you might want to rent out some of your bedrooms. Now, if you have a really large house, you could have 2 or 3 people renting rooms. Now, that would be a nice side income for you to help pay your utilities or your mortgage if you still have one, something like that. But most of all, it's helping others and it's helping yourself because this is how you're staying engaged. The other thing is taking care of your partner or the other spouse or a girlfriend. Sometimes you go and you take care of your best friend because she doesn't have anybody else and she has no family. So there are all these things to take into consideration. One of the things, as we grow older, we think about our bodies a lot and how they change. Put that bathing suit on and get to the beach or the swimming pool at your complex. Whatever you're doing, who cares what they're thinking about you? They're not looking at you. They're looking at the girl down the way who's got the tiny bikini on. Ah, that used to be you, huh? Okay, well, even men have these doubts and these fears, but for some reason, the men seem to find compatible women sooner than women find a compatible man. And that's always been true, and it probably always will be true, because they're up until our generation and the one just underneath us, women didn't have careers and 401ks and things like that. So maybe they're looking for somebody to help them afford the rest of life. And maybe a man is willing to do that because he sees a beautiful woman in her 50s or 60s, 70s, and wants companionship, and he's willing to marry her, and he's willing to help her out financially. So what I want to say to you, we're getting ready to say goodbye for the day, is your attitude is everything for your long life and your happy life. It's all in your mind. Remember, somebody once said to you, oh, it's just in your mind. Well, this time it is in your mind, and you want to keep it in your mind. You want to keep it positive. So as you're going about your day today, think about your next adventure. Lou and I are thinking about our next adventure, and we've made some trips around looking at different places we might want to go. We've been kind of wandering, aging people since he was turning these countries around. And I swear to goodness, it's kind of like 5 years in one place. You get the urge to travel again. You get the urge to start a new adventure. An adventure is anything. I'm writing a book. I'm thinking about writing a short book, an ebook on business ethics. I'm writing my memoirs, my sort of autobiography, because I want my grandchildren to know where their family came from. Not just me, but some of the people in my family and all, and what they have done and what they can accomplish, and fun like that. You can do that too. Your grandchildren would really love it. And you don't necessarily have to sit down and write it by hand or on a computer. You can get a small tape recorder and record it, and you can give it to somebody to transcribe it. You can have it bound at someplace like Office Depot, Staples, something like that. Or you can go big and you can get it self-published, because maybe everybody else wants to read about your life. You don't know. You have interesting stories to tell. I'm working on a new club for women. It's a combination of women of a certain age and what they want to do, put a little excitement in their lives, but also continue to do healthy, wealthy, and wise lectures with some of my friends and people that are experts in the different fields. So I will be inviting you all to join that. But in the meantime, I want you to choose these 5 attitudes to live a healthy, wealthy, and wise second part of your life. Number 1, positive mindset. Number 2, stay invested with your friends. Keep moving, staying moving. Your body is most important. Make positive decisions about where you're going to live, what you're going to do with your life, and what you're going to do with your day. Be positive about living arrangements. Maybe you want to downsize really a lot so that you have more money in your pocket to go spend and have fun. And the last thing I want to tell you is the most important to me. be grateful for being alive, because not everyone has been given the gift of life. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. And remember, cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today. Thank you.